Welcome back, guys. In today's class we're going to understand how to configure Telnet, protocol and SSH. Remember, in the previous classes we said that there are two ways to configure a device. You can configure it locally when you are there using console cable, right? And another way is to configure it remotely when you are not near the physical device, right? And in this case we're going to use a diagram that we drew in our previous class of how to connect different networks using a router. Okay, and suppose you have not watched that class, kindly refer to the previous class. Okay, you will understand how to connect different networks using a router and let those networks to communicate, the devices in those various networks to communicate, right? And so we are going to use the same diagram that we used there. Everything has already been configured, so what's remaining is how to configure Telnet and SSH protocol. Okay, so guys, before we can begin our class today, kindly, for those who have not subscribed, do us that favor, click on the subscribe button and add us one count, right? Okay, so let's begin. I will go to our documentation and at least share with you a little bit of theory. How to configure Telnet and SSH. Okay, I've been saying this all along. There are two ways through which you can configure your networking device. Okay, you can configure it locally through LAN console, right? We just use console cable and the console port in the device, right? And another way is remotely using LAN VTY, okay, through which you can use protocols such as Telnet or SSH. Okay, alright, so remote access and configuration. For remote access and configuration, we use these two protocols, Telnet and SSH. So to use Telnet or SSH, you must have a software known as Telnet or SSH client installed in your computer. An example of that Telnet or SSH client is PuTTY. Okay, it's PuTTY software. And on a remote device, let's say on your router that is far away, okay, there should be a Telnet or SSH server installed and running. Okay, in your computer through which you want to access the routers remotely, you must have a Telnet or SSH client software installed, right? And on that router you must have a Telnet or SSH server installed and running. Okay, so before we can go deeper, let's understand the differences between Telnet and SSH. Okay, there are two protocols that you can use to remotely configure the networking devices. Okay, basically Telnet uses TCP port number 23, while SSH TCP port number 22. Alright, then Telnet is not secure. Why? Because all data, including your usernames and passwords, are sent as clear text or plain text, the way that you write them. Let's say your username is admin and password is admin. Whenever you are using some tools that you can use to inspect or analyze packets, you can clearly see that usernames and passwords, right? That's why we're saying Telnet is not secure. Then SSH is very secure because it employs encryption mechanism to encrypt all data sent over the network. Okay, so suppose we're using, let's say, Wireshark to inspect or analyze the packets that are sent over the network. You can't read any information through SSH protocol. Why? Because they are all encrypted. Okay, and that's why Telnet is not commonly used today, but SSH widely used, right? So this is a typical interface of a Telnet or SSH client. This is PuTTY software. So in PuTTY software, this is how you can Telnet to or employ SSH mechanism to remotely log into a device. You just include the IP address of that device. The IP address of that device basically is the default gateway, right? And the port number. The port number will come automatically. Whenever you press on SSH, the port number will come to 22. But whenever you press on Telnet, the port number will come to 23, right? Okay, then we just click open and things will pop up, and these things is what we're going to look at, so don't worry about anything. Let's see what's next. Configuring Telnet. Configuring Telnet is basically very easy. Okay, what you have to do is just to enter the interface of line VTY 0 to 15. Okay, VTY interfaces are 16, 0 to 15, 0 up to 16, 0 up to 15 are 16 interfaces, right? Then what you have to do is to specify the password, Cisco at 123 for our case, right? Then authenticate the user, right? Specify the login command. That's all. So what you have to do is to save your configuration and exit that interface. Okay, and you're done with configuring Telnet. It's very easy. It's not like SSH, right? So for the case of SSH, the first step is to configure the hostname of the device. You should configure the hostname of the device, right? Then the next step is to you set up the domain name of that device. For example, IP domain name, this one for our case is GTH, right? Then you basically set up the local username and password. Username, GTH, password, this one. Very simple, guys. Then this is a part that is used to encrypt all the data under SSH protocol. Okay, you must specify this command: crypto key generate RSA. RSA is just an encryption mechanism. There are several encryption mechanisms, but in this case we are using RSA. Okay, guys. Then finally you have to allow only SSH access. A command that is used to allow only SSH access and disable Telnet is this one: transport input SSH. So before this one, guys, you should enter the interface first, line VTY. Okay, then you specify login local, right, guys? Then finally disable Telnet and enable SSH through this command. This command will disable Telnet, right? Because we don't want a scenario where two protocols are used in remote login. One is secure, another one is not secure. It's not good, right? Okay, guys, so let's go to our practicals and see how to configure Telnet and SSH. I will go back to our packet tracer. So guys, we are back in our packet tracer, and I said suppose you have not watched the previous video, kindly go and watch it before you come to this one, right? Because we learned how to configure IP address to the router's interface, right? We configure IP address to this interface, this interface, and this interface, and the IP addresses of these interfaces acted as default gateways of the connecting LAN. For example, this LAN, the default gateway of these host devices is the IP address of this interface, right? And it's that IP address of that interface that we will use to Telnet to. I mean, it's that IP address of that interface that we will use to verify our Telnet or SSH protocols. Okay, so let's go ahead and configure Telnet first. So I will go to this router, enable config t, and I said whenever you want to configure telnet, basically what you do is just to enter line console, line vty 0 to 15, right guys? Then you specify password. Let's say Cisco at 123. Okay, then verify this, authenticate the user, login. You do right to save the configuration and exit this interface. Okay, and guys, there's one part that I need you to add because it's also an added level of security. Okay, enable password, a password that will secure our privilege exec mode. Just type enable password, let's say 123. Okay, remember our telnet password is Cisco at 123, but enable password, the password that will enable us to enter privilege exec mode is 123. Okay, then you do right. We are done configuring telnet. Hence, we can remotely log into this device, this router. Okay, remember you can use a console cable, plug into the console port of the router, then to your PC and configure the router, and hence, and now we don't have any console cable here, right? You can see the router is connected to the switches, right? And now let's say this is the IT department and they want to configure this router. How will he do it? He will use Telnet or SSH, but in our case, let's first use Telnet, right? It's remote login, okay? Because we don't have any console cable that is connecting PC to the router. So I'll go to PC3 and try to telnet to that IP address. Okay. So how to verify telnet? Just type telnet and we use IP address. And now which IP address? The default gateway, guys. You can use this one, this one, this one, or this one, right? So let's say we want to use this one first. The IP address of this interface was 192.168.3.1. okay, so I'll go to PC3 again and say 192.168.3.1. that was the IP address of the gateway, right? Remember, gateway. Hit enter. Can you see, guys, there's something here that has popped up. Our telnet protocol is successful. The telnet configuration is successful. Trying this one, see, then it's open, and now it's telling us user access verification. Which password did we use for telnet? It was Cisco at 123. Hit enter. See, guys, originally we were in PC, the default name of the computer. See this one is computer, PC3, and now we have entered the router's interface. Okay, enable. See, guys, the reason why I wanted us to configure enable password to secure the privilege exec mode, right? You know, for added level of security. So whenever we want to configure the router, this is user exec mode. For us to get from user exec mode to privilege exec mode, we use which command? Enable, or en. And whenever we type that command, verification is required, right? Because we configured enabled password. So our password was 123. See, guys, and now we can configure the router from this point. Okay, we can even go ahead to configure SSH from this point. Okay, guys, and now let's say guys, you know, this user, before I say this, let's verify telnet from this computer. I'll go to desktop, then this one, then telnet 192.168.1.1. let's say the gateway of this network, it was 1.1. Okay, suppose you have not watched the previous video, kindly watch so that you can pick up very fast. Okay, then hit enter. See guys, it's successful. So I'll just use Cisco at 123. Hit enter. See, we're in the router's interface. Enable, then password to secure privilege mode was 123. See guys, we can configure the router from that point, right guys? Okay guys, so what I wanted to say here, let's say the IT guy who was in charge of configuring the router was connected over a wireless network. This is wired network. Okay, they are connected over using the cable. They are connected using the cable. It's wired network. So for example, let's say the guy was in the field, okay, and he was seated there with his laptop, and he has been called that, oh, there's a problem with the router, we can't access this thing, we can't. So is required to configure that router, but is connected over wireless network. Okay, it's the same thing. Allow me to include wireless connection in this topology. So I'll come to the wireless devices, then choose a P access point PT, right? This is a device to connect end devices through Wi-Fi. And don't worry about it guys, we will look how to configure access points. I'm doing it very fast because our discussion today was on Telnet. So I will connect it to the switch. Okay, and I will take a laptop. The guy is on the field with his laptop and is required to configure this router, and is connected over wireless network. Okay, so we have a laptop here, right? And it should be connected to a wireless network. It should be connected to a wireless network, right, from this device. So I click on the laptop to include a wireless slot in the laptop. First I will power it off, then remove this slot. See this one, remove it first, place it there. See here is empty. Then come and drag this one, this WPC 300N, and place it inside there. That is a wireless interface. Alright, then power it on again. This laptop will connect directly to this one automatically. See, because there is no password, though username is default, I guess so. So I'll come to this one and port 01. The username is default, no password, so it has connected automatically. So I'll go to this laptop and give it an IP address and try to telnet. So let's say 192.168. What? Let me say here, which network? .2. Let's say .5. Then default gateway was 192.168.2.1, right guys? Okay, so let me try first if it can ping the default gateway, then everything is okay. Ping 192.168.2.1. it's pinging successfully, so we can try to telnet. I'll go to the same laptop and come to CMD. Okay, then telnet 192.168.2.1, the default gateway, right? And hit enter. See guys, it's the same thing that we are getting from these computers. Although these computers were using wired connection, the laptop here is using wireless connection, but it can telnet to this router, right? So here it is, guys. Okay, so the password was Cisco at 123. Successful. We are in the router. We can configure the router from this laptop. Then enable. Okay, 123. Then we can start configuring the laptop. Then we can start configuring the router from this laptop. So let's say we want to configure hostname to this router from this laptop. We will just say hostname R1. Let's say R1. Hit enter. Sorry, this is privilege exec mode. We can't configure anything. Config T. Then hostname R1. See guys, can you see it has changed to R1 here? Okay. Alright guys, so let's go ahead to configure SSH from this laptop. Okay guys, so we said for you to configure SSH, the first thing that you must do is to configure the hostname of the device, of which you have configured as R1. And now the next thing is to configure the domain name, IP domain name. So for our case, the IP domain name will be let's say we said gtech, this one, and hit enter. Okay, then the next thing that you must do, you should configure local username and password. You know, through SSH protocol, it uses username to log into the remote device, username and IP address. But Telnet, as you can see, we just Telnet to IP address, right? But for SSH, we use username and IP address, right? So username, let's say admin, very simple, like that. Then password, let's just say Cisco at 123. Guys, very simple, very simple. Okay, very simple. Then what's remaining? This is the most important part of encrypting the data. Okay, crypto, just type crypto generate you just type crypto key generate RSA and hit enter. Then as you can see, the name for the keys will be router name, the host name was R1 and the domain name was gtech. And now choose the size of the key modulus in the range of 360 to 2048 for your general purpose keys. Choosing a key modulus greater than this one may take a few seconds. So in this case, I will always recommend use 1024. Guys, always remember 1024. Okay, and hit enter. See, generating this one, bit this one, key will be none this one, and it's okay. Done. Okay, done. So guys, what's remaining? Is to allow SSH protocol and disable Telnet. How do you do it? We first enter the line VTY 0 to 15. Okay, all these interfaces should be accessed through SSH, right? Then you hit enter. Which command now? Login local, authenticate the user, hit enter. And now let's disable Telnet. Which protocol do we use? We use transport. I'm forgetting it. In suppose you're forgetting something, just click on the question mark and it will come, everything will come. Question mark. Okay, transport question mark input SSH. Now transport input SSH. Very simple, guys, and hit enter. See everything, and do right, everything is working, and exit this interface. And now our Telnet, and now our SSH configuration is done. And now we want to verify the SSH configuration. I'll say hand. Now you know we are still in the routers, so let's go back to PC. Just exit. See, connection to this one is closed by foreign host. See, we have closed connection to the default gateway, right? So we're back to the PC interface. So we want to verify SSH. Guys, remember this one. SSH is a little bit complicated but very easy. Okay, so how do we verify SSH? We just type a command SSH, then -L, not 1, -L. Remember that this one is not 1. It used to confuse me before, but now it can never. It's SSH space then -L, L, not N or 1, L. Then, which username did we give to the router? Let me go back up. It was admin, then the password was Cisco at 123. Okay, admin. And now in SSH we use username and IP address which is 192.168.2.1. okay guys, this is the username of this router, and now this is the IP address of the router's interface that acts as the default gateway of this network, right? And you hit enter. See guys, SSH configuration is successful. It's requesting for password. And which password did we use? Cisco at 123. Good guys. See, we are in the router's interface. Enable. Then enable password was 123. Okay, we can configure the router from this point. Guys, we have successfully configured Telnet and SSH. And now guys, we said that this command transport input SSH was to disable Telnet. Now let us try to Telnet again. Remember the first time we telneted this, the first time that we were telnetting to this IP address, it was successful. Okay, and through that Telnet protocol we managed to configure SSH protocol from our PC. Okay, so I will just exit, and now we're back to PC. Now let's try to telnet to which IP address? 192.168.2.1. It will not work guys. Why? The transport input SSH protocol will disable any telnet user. Okay, see guys, connection to this one closed by foreign host. Why? SSH protocol of this one transport input SSH has disabled any telnet user. Okay guys, I hope you have mastered how to configure Telnet and SSH. Okay, this documentation is here and you can go step by step, right? Okay, so at least let's verify SSH from any computer. Let's choose this one. The first thing that I'll do, I'll try to Telnet. Okay, Telnet to this one. See, it's closed by the foreign host. And now let's do SSH. SSH space -L, then admin. Which IP address? Let's take the default gateway of this network, which is 192.168.1.1. Guys, it's successful. SSH is working successfully. Telnet cannot work because we have disabled it, right? So the password was Cisco at 123. Invalid Cisco at 123. Okay, then enable password was 123. Good, we can configure the router and even change the host name. Let's say to change host name here, configure T, then host name, let's say gtech, do right. Okay, now let's go back to this PC and try to verify. No, let's go to this PC and try to verify SSH again. I'll go to this PC and let me do Telnet first. Closed. It cannot work. Now SSH will work because we have configured it successfully. in the router admin. Which IP address do you want us to use? The default gateway, that 192.168.1.1. See, it's working successfully. Cisco at 123. Enable. We've just configured the jitter chip from the other computer. See, guys, this is a very important class that everybody should class, and everybody should have the knowledge to configure these two protocols, Telnet and SSH. Okay. Alright guys, I hope you have mastered how to configure these two protocols, and suppose you have any problem, kindly drop a comment such that I can respond to your question, right? And kindly, before you can log out, do us the favor and subscribe to our channel. Okay, so bye and see you again in the next class.